Hey Warriors fans, the school year and the sports seasons are winding down, and that means it's time to talk conference tournament season. We have the head men's and women's tennis coach Jay Massart here because both programs have advanced to the conference tournament again. Both teams, coincidentally will be at St. Norbert early next week, Monday, Tuesday. And Jay, congratulations, first of all, on getting both those programs back. We'll kind of take this reverse order because the men's program plays their conference season here in the spring, so it segues nicely right into the conference tournament.
Yep.
Let's talk men first.
Okay.
And we were talking here just a little bit off the air. I know 2-4 in the conference, but the last 2 wins coming in the last couple of weeks. So every team always wants to be playing well when it matters most. Seems
Right.
like your guys are right now. Talk us through that.
Guys, I think have overachieved, have done a nice job this spring. You know, we start with a lot of D2, a lot of tough teams in the beginning. Our conference starts out where we play the top 3 or 4 teams right off the bat. Yeah. So it starts out tough, and then we kind of get the teams that are a little bit closer to us, and they played well. We beat them both, pretty handily, 4-3 in one and 5-2, 6-1 in the other, I guess.
Yeah, you won 2 of your last 3. That last one, like you say, 4-3 in a real thriller, quite frankly, against Concordia with Chicago. What did you see in that last match? One of those 50-50 matches that tilted it in your direction?
Yeah, we're both matches, and the one against Edgewood and the one against Concordia. They could have gone either way, and against Concordia, we had Logan Hennon win, a decisive match, probably that he was not the favorite to win. And that was pretty much the difference there. Of course, obviously, the 3 other guys have to win as well. And then against Concordia, it was more of the top of the lineup. Connor came through with a tough win. Aiden had a tough win at number 1, and they played a good doubles match. So.
When you and I previewed the season back in January, talking men's tennis here, and we kind of talked a little bit about how you wanted to challenge Aiden Newberg as a senior, as a leader, to kind of finish on a high note. How have you seen him now in hindsight develop over the last several months in his final year?
Yeah, I think he's developed nicely. He's done a good job. He's a good kid. He's done a good job. He works hard. He's not one of the more vocal leaders, that I've had in the past. He leads more by example. But he's played hard every match, and I think the other guys look up to him because he's a hard worker, and they know he's a good player as well.
The doubles dynamic with Aiden Newberg, Connor Heesen, with their 4-2 in conference, I think, in doubles. Can you kind of explain what's been so good for those two, maybe why they complement each other, especially in league play?
Yeah, personality-wise, they're opposites, so they're opposite personalities. Connor's the more,
he's the vocal guy.
He's the more outgoing guy. Aiden's a little bit more reserved. And just through hard work and practice, they've little by little gotten better. At one point early in the season, I'd say maybe about a third of it done. I talked to the guys and I said, I'm going to shake up the doubles and make some changes. And obviously, those two probably weren't happy about that. Ended up not doing it, but in hindsight, maybe it was a little kick in the butt that they needed. I mean, they had a great win over MSOE. MSOE won the conference, and we beat their number 1 team. So that was a nice win for those guys.
What changes, I don't know if that's even the right word, but what do you look to, conference tournament time, what changes, what do you say, what's the biggest piece of advice you give your team collectively, be it in the singles or the doubles matches when it comes to kind of a win in advance, lose and go home situation?
Yeah, that's definitely what it is, and really what I do is I challenge the guys and say our job, and the girls, is to play better than we played last time. You've got to play a little bit better than you played last time. We know the lineups. Unlike a regular match, we know the lineups in advance because they have to be submitted and then they're passed out to us. So you can game plan a little bit more for the matchups and be a little more particular as a coach. And you just really look for that. Hey, that's everybody's responsible for their court. Everybody's depending on it. Don't rely on the next guy to win. Take care of your match.
Battling St. Norbert, it'll be up at the Green Bay Tennis Center Monday at 11:30 in the morning. That's when the match begins. They beat you 7-0, but that was, like you said, early on in the season when the kind of the schedule was front-loaded in a lot of ways. When you look back, what's maybe 1 or 2 key takeaways that you need to obviously change here in the tournament against those guys.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things we have to change is we were close to getting the doubles point. We didn't get the doubles point last time. We had 3 or 4 people play really good first sets and kind of fall apart in the second set. We had a couple of them, 2 of them, play long matches and lose long matches. So we've got to win those key matchups like that. And it's a tough place to play. They're the fastest courts in the entire conference.
Really?
It's indoors at the Green Bay Tennis Center, and the lighting is very dark. And they also have pickleball and all lines on the court, so there's a lot of lines moving around. So it's a good home field advantage to have if you're St. Norbert's. But I think we're more ready this time than we were. I preached a lot about how fast the courts were. I think now the guys, after playing there once, say, oh my gosh, I know how fast the courts are. They are fast.
Before we segue and talk a little bit about the women's tournament, also up there at Green Bay, can you give me an X factor? I mean, an X factor for your men if they are to beat St. Norbert, and maybe if they are to make a little noise and maybe have some little upset run here in the postseason. What's an X factor?
The X factor is our team getting better at volleying. The courts are fast, so you've got to shorten the point. You've got to get in. We have to volley well as a team. If we volley well, we volley consistent, we play the big points well, we're certainly in these matches. We just have to, we have to close them out, and that's the hard part.
All right, let's transition now because the women's tennis team will also be at St. Norbert on Tuesday at the Green Bay Tennis Center, the matchup there with the Green Knights. And for fans who don't know, the women's conference season was in the fall, so you've spent this spring, obviously still practicing, but playing a handful of non-conference matches. It's interesting the way things play out, but it is what it is. I guess, what have you seen from your women through these non-con? Because you talk about a confident group playing well, like we talked about late last fall. What have you seen from the spring to hopefully continue that momentum from fall?
Yeah, well, this is the time that a lot of the girls are working on specific techniques, things that they need to work on to improve their game, and I think they've done a good job with that. We finished supposedly 6th, but 3 of us tied for 4th. That comes down to a set or 2. We could very easily be hosting one of these matches as opposed to be driving up. So it'll be the same type of thing. The speed of the court won't bother the girls like it bothers the guys because there's not as much power from the serves and the game's not as aggressive. It's still more of a ground stroke game. So it'll just be a matter of just kind of making that adjustment, but it won't be as big of adjustment for the ladies as it is for the guys.
The psychological element, the mental game is so important in your sport and ratcheted up certainly in conference tournament time. And I remember that was one of the things that you really admired in this year's group, the mental toughness of the ladies.
Right, yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it. It's been just a good group. They weren't predicted to do very much. We've got a young team. And, the other coaches in the league didn't think they were that good. And, practicing every day, staying together as a team and really, kind of doing the little things you have to do. They had a very, very good season.
Allie Schmidt, your senior, one of your leaders, she's playing really well at the end of conference season. What have you seen from Allie through the non-conference? And maybe what was the thing or two, and don't give away all the secrets, but maybe an area or two where you wanted her to hone in on here heading into the tournament?
Yeah, well, with Allie, it's, it kind of comes and goes with her serve. Once she gets consistent with her serve, it's powerful enough, she can control the point from there. So she serves well, she's going to have success. And you're right, she brings a lot of experience to the team. And this was a match, she was up a set and 3-1 and game point for 4-1 when last time we played last time we played St. Norbert. Yeah. So there's no doubt she's got an opportunity to win here, and it'd be nice to her last week of tennis to finish off on a high note.
How often will you take a player, Allie or whomever, and look back at the game tape or just dissect how that first match went in terms of getting ready for round number 2? And how many alterations might you make?
Yeah, well, definitely you would look at it every time. So anytime somebody's playing an opponent for a second, a third time, we're looking at it, we're talking about it, and the alterations will depend on what that athlete can do. Any strategy is great. You can say, I'm going to serve and volley, you'll win every point. But if they don't have the ability to execute that, you can't do it. So they've got to play within their game to what they can do.
Do you anticipate adjustments from, in this case, St. Norbert, or then do you just get too bogged down in we'll adjust to the adjustments, and then they're adjusting to our adjustments, and it just kind of messes everything up.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I would think they would come in overconfident, thinking that they're, we're better than this team, we're going to beat them, and so I wouldn't think they would think they have to make a lot of adjustments. We'll make the adjustments, beforehand, and we've been talking about them all week. And then as the match goes on, Coach David and I will make adjustments if they've made some, and kind of tweak it a little bit from there.
The women, like the men, will be at St. Norbert. That is going to be Tuesday morning at 11:30 at the Green Bay Tennis Center. Last thing, I asked you about an X factor for the guys. What about an X factor for the women?
Yeah, X factor probably the same thing. We were really close in winning matches there, and I would say, they could be in this match. Again, we've got to play a good doubles match. We've got to get help from positions 5 and 6. Those girls have to play well down there. And if they do, I think we certainly are. We're in this match.
It's funny because I think you could probably look at every sport when it's a postseason situation. How often do you see somebody that nobody talks about? Maybe it's somebody off the bench. In a team sport or in a sport like tennis. To your point, maybe it's your 5 or 6 that suddenly has the best match of the season, and that kind of bolsters the entire team.
For sure. And doubles has a lot to do with that. When there's 3 doubles matches, you need 2 of the 3 to get the 1 point.
Right.
If you can get that point, a lot of times you see the energy level lift. And you've got to be careful. If you don't get the point, you got to de-emphasize it and say, come on, back to singles and let's go. But if we could get the first doubles point, I think that might, that would certainly help the momentum going into the match.
Women's tennis team, men's tennis team, both battling St. Norbert in the conference tournament on Monday and Tuesday. All the links and all the travel info, they could trek up there. Watch them tear down all the draft stuff, too, at WLCsports.com. All the best, Coach.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Nice seeing you again.
Coach Massart and company, tourney time. Thanks for watching.